So, welcome to Cinema Eclectica, part of the Geek Show podcast network. This is the Geek Show's dedicated movie podcast. I'm Graham, and this week I've been joined by
Rob.
And later on in the show, we'll have Andrew and Mick here to talk about the New Mutants, because that happened.
It's fitting that the week where we're doing a movie which is just kind of higgledy-piggledy is the week where New Mutants would actually fall. It's very in character for it, I feel.
Does feel like something that has maybe come from a parallel universe. But before we do, we've got a bit of business from last week to sort out, because last week we had a question of the week.
Yes.
It was, what is the most confusing movie you've seen? And we got some that were just after the deadline that I do want to spotlight.
Okay. Well, it's still thematically on brand for this week, so...
Yes, I would say so, yeah. Rebecca De Lima says, Donnie Darko, I did not understand that movie at all, although it may have been to do with the fact that I was young and still learning English. Is it an easy film to understand?
Well, if you've got like a problem of learning a language while you're watching it, it's a pretty high bar you're setting yourself there.
Yeah, I do think if you sat there going, oh, what's that phrase in Portuguese? Sparkle motion. Then the movie is leading you up the garden path a bit.
Yeah. I mean, I watched it as a teenager. I don't think I've seen it since, to be honest. I've never really felt the need, but as a teenager, I didn't 100% get it.
I loved it when I first saw it, and I had been kind of chary about going back to it because, Richard Kelly's later career hasn't covered himself in glory, really.
Well, there's a history of directors who basically had that debut or whatever point it falls in the career where they just really hit it. They hit a home run, and the rest of it they were just kind of everyman.
And it shouldn't affect your viewpoint. It shouldn't make the original movie any worse, but somehow it kind of does.
There's tons of directors like that, so yeah. But it's just one of those things. Don't ask me to name them because I can't, but they exist.
You've made that statement confidently, knowing that the listeners can fill in some of the blanks.
Yes, that's entirely what I did. Yes.
And the second answer we got in was from Danielle Boucher, who said, I've just watched I'm Thinking of Ending Things. Apart from kind of making me feel like I wanted to end things, I was also rather confused. I'm going to watch it again, though, because I did find it very interesting. I suspect it won't become much clearer, but I actually don't mind that.
Hey, Danielle, we do the segues here. Less of that.
We normally do them much worse than that. I'm worried this tarnishes our brand, to be honest.
It does indeed, yeah. Our listeners are making the show better. Up our game.
So yeah, I'm Thinking of Ending Things, released on Netflix just over a week ago. The new film by Charlie Kaufman, starring Jesse's Plemons and Buckley, a double Jesse pack.
Yes. As well as Toni Collette and David Thewlis.
Yes, and very few other people. There's a good dog.
Yeah, who seems to be the wettest dog in existence. But
yes,
he is a good dog.
I wanted to phone up Ben Shapiro and ask him what medical condition could make a dog that wet. I'm sure he would have some insight.
And he'd probably throw in some comments about hip-hop being not music, so, any chance he gets, that guy.
My doctor wife, who is a doctor, has said that any dog that wet must be suffering from a terminal illness. I don't make the rules. My doctor wife, who is a doctor, does.
Yeah, that's pretty much spot on. But I'm thinking of ending things. I've got the description up here, which, as far as sort of plot synopsis, it's as best as you could manage. But again, at the end of the day, what the film is and how it plays out, it doesn't really mean anything. But it's been described as nothing is as it seems when a woman experiencing misgivings about her new boyfriend joins him on a road trip to meet his parents at their remote farm. It'll do.
Yeah. And normally, I'm very much in favour of giving cryptic films a basic synopsis because it gives people some room for interpretation. What is The Lighthouse about? It's about two blokes going mad in a lighthouse. There's a lot more to it, but that depends on, what you get from it.
Yeah.
This time, I'm not so sure. I think this maybe has to be a bit of an interpretation first movie.
Yeah, I mean, for a while it seems like perfectly reasonable. There's a drive from whatever, I think, non-denominational American city. It's just somewhere American city. There's a drive. They go through snow. They see some barns, not much else. Then they get to the house. A fair enough conversation with the parents. They're a bit weird. Although, frankly, if your parents are Tony Collette and David Thewlis, I'd be disappointed if they're nothing less. Frankly.
Yes.
They're both wonderful, wonderful actors.
Adore them, yeah.
And then Jessie Buckley goes upstairs. And it's kind of like the moment in Mulholland Drive where it's like a perfectly reasonable movie and then they go to the theatre and you just don't know what's happening anymore. You don't even know who you are. And it just completely becomes unglued. Or more glued on a subtextual level, maybe? I don't know.
One of the things about that is, and one of the things that did surprise me, is that bit with Tony Collette and David Thewlis, which is like most of the trailer, that takes you up to about the start of Act 2, would you say?
It was talking about 45, 50 minutes, somewhere on that.
Yeah.
Sort of time, yeah.
There's not much of them in, and I was hoping for more, not just because, as you say, Collette and Thewlis are absolutely wonderful, but I felt like this was going to be sort of Kaufman's take on a kind of isolation horror, and I knew when I thought that I wasn't going to get Evil Dead.
Well, it was described as a horror by a lot of people. For the fact, yeah. So that's not without past the realms of possibility expecting that.
No, exactly, yeah. And I think... Do you remember Synecdoche, New York?
I remember it, yes.
That was his directorial debut from 2000 and, I want to say, 9. About 10 years ago, anyway. And I think that was when he was tasked to write a horror film. But he wanted to write about something that scares him, which it turns out is getting old and dying. And part of you thinks, okay, that's kind of a bait and switch, but, getting old and dying is pretty scary. Fair point, well made.
Well, it's such a big target that, yeah, everybody is. It's not like I'm scared of birds or I'm scared of, like, swimming in open water. It's not something where you could actually tailor something to. It's just so broad. It's meaningless, if you get me, anyway.
Yeah. There were bits in I'm Thinking of Ending Things that reminded me of Synecdoche. And I think I rewatched Synecdoche, New York recently, incidentally, and thought it was every bit as good as I remembered. So this isn't coming from a place of just not getting Kaufman's work.
Yeah.
But it does that thing of hopping through someone's life where you will see them and then you will see them much older and you will not know how much time has passed.
And it goes backwards and forwards, so it's not...
Yeah. There's more complexity to it in this film than that, I guess, but also kind of less, because in Synecdoche, New York, you're watching characters you like and empathise with growing old and dying, whereas in this one, you're watching cartoon idiots do it.
Yeah, I mean, going back to a point you just said there, it seems that as it unfolds, if you want to understand it, essentially, in a nutshell, it's a person going through their past, going through their future, going through their fantasies, their dreams and their interests, and sort of mushing it up into a paste which is flavourless and confusing.
Yeah, so I mean, we've had some interpretation then. Should we talk about emotional reaction? I mean, what did you actually think of this film?
I think what you said there was pretty much spot on. Look, I mean, I like all of the actors involved, the two Jessies, Tony Collette and David Thewlis. I think they're all fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, Jessie Buckley, this is the first time I've seen in anything.
Oh, really?
Yeah. However, it's not a great introduction because, as you said, it's kind of like I've made a big deal in the past about how I don't like a certain type of Richard Linklater movie because the whole walk around Austin, Texas, for the sake of examples, and just muse on this really, really crude philosophical blur.
Yeah, the kind of stoner end of his work, I guess.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
this, it's exactly the same, only with the blinkers taken off, so it's just philosophical blur by people who aren't. There's never a point where they're established as likeable people who you want to spend time around. The parents, yes. There's loads of character and texture and weird history and all sorts going on in their characters and their performances. But the two Jessies, I just don't care. And for 2 hours 15 minutes of I don't care, and going through like all their lives, zipping zopping all over the place, history, fantasy, dreams, whatever. It's a hard film, and I think it's all on purpose. And personally, I really can't stand movies where they sort of alienate people on purpose like that.
You brought up something there that I wasn't going to mention, but I'm glad you reminded me of. Like I said, this is 2 hours 15 minutes. It is far too long, and it reminded me that when the first sort of wave of post Charlie Kaufman kind of indie mind benders started being made, whether it was something like Skeletons, which I love, or something like Primer, which I hate, they were all at least a manageable length. Kaufman's films, with the exception of Anomalisa, and I assume that's because of the labour-intensive nature of doing stop motion, just get longer and longer, and I wanted someone to tell him, there's something in here if you raise of at least half an hour out of it.
Because there's about a point, about 100 minutes in, maybe? It feels like this is a good stopping point.
Yeah.
And the last act, I mean, I can describe the last act, and I'm not worried about anybody being spoiled for it, because they go into the high school. They go into the high school. Just spoiler warning, just in case anybody's sensitive.
Spoiler warning implies a kind of cause and effect, that isn't here.
But just for the sake of argument, people get snippy about those things. Spoiler warning. Yeah. There. They go to a high school, which Jesse Plemons used to go to. He disappears to get rid of some ice cream, which apparently they serve 24 hours in this weird American state.
In a blizzard, yeah.
Yeah. And when they're in there, they meet an old man who she has a really emotional goodbye with, Jessie Buckley. And then there's ballet dancers.
Yeah.
It swaps to the old man who becomes naked. He's told to go into the hall by an animated pig.
Yeah.
And then there's a musical number at the end.
With an elderly version of Jesse Plemons' character, yes.
So that's not something which is, I spoilt the ending there, I'm a monster. No. It's clearly, this is like something that he's trying to say with the subtext here, but... It's kind of it's the Hodorowski thing. It's so much subtext and so much layering, but it's done in such an obnoxious goddamn way. It's incredibly alienating, I feel.
Well, I mean, you say that you compare it to Hodorowski. I think, as we mentioned last week, I haven't seen that much Hodorowski. What I have seen, I enjoyed.
More contemporary Hodorowski on that point, just more contemporary.
Part of the reason that I enjoyed what Hodorowski I've seen is because even when I find it totally impenetrable, it is at least original. Whereas here, as Rob said, you've got a dance scene, an animated scene, and a musical number, which are back-to-back the three things that screenwriters do when they think, oh God, this script's going nowhere, I'd better throw in something weird to wake the audience up.
Yeah. I mean, I had to do it in 2 viewings, I'll be honest. I was enjoying it for it. It's coincidentally, I was enjoying it when Toni Collette and David Thewlis were about.
Yeah.
Because I had a sense of character there. I had a sense of sort of world that is, because when characters sort of reflect the world that they're part of in movies, I feel, and then set up who they are, what sort of characters people used to be, but without them, it's just Jesse Buckley talking about how everything's hopeless.
Yes. And, you know, you've touched on something there which I think is really unusual in Kaufman's work here, which is that it is not funny. You know, the Colette and Thewlis bit is funny, and I think that's maybe why you've latched onto that.
Oh yeah, because it's lovable quirk. There's something there.
Yeah. And that used to be his strong suit. I mean, even Synecdoche, New York, which is right at the darkest end of his previous work, is funny, I think. It's very sad, but it has some good jokes, and I don't. It's sort of a pull back the curtain thing. It is very much like those times when Woody Allen, you know, was America's darling back in the 70s,
Yeah.
and every now and then he would think, oh, well, they love me so much for my comedy. They must love me even more when I do a Bergman rip-off and show my true soul. And it turned out everyone just went, no, get back to doing something like Annie Hall. That was much better.
Get in your box and entertain me, monkey. That's what the world did.
There is an element where what I think is fascinating about Kaufman is not that he's a spectacularly original philosopher, although his ideas are very original by movie standards. It's that he expresses these ideas in a witty and entertaining way, and pulling that away to so much of an extent, it made this film feel really shallow. Like the bit where David Thewlis is talking about how he don't much like them abstract paintings. I like something where you can see what it is. And I felt like I was listening to a teenager tell his dad that he just doesn't get it, man.
But it's funny though. There's something to connect with there.
Yeah.
It's just generally, if I was going to describe it in 2 words, it'd be gruelingly misanthropic.
Yeah, I'm completely with you there. Yeah. I will say, maybe it's because I've seen Buckley in more stuff, but I did like her a lot in this. I thought this was as good a performance as you can give with the restrictions of the material.
Oh yeah, I mean, like I said, I've not seen anything by her, but I instantly became a fan of her and her style. You know, there's something for me to look further into there, but the fact that I got that from this role is kind of miraculous, I feel.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah. Yes, very true. Are there any final thoughts we have before we attempt the absolutely chaotic task of recommendations?
I don't know. It's just one of these movies where I don't know what people sitting it. You go in Letterboxd and you see 5 stars, and it's not like a small review. To give this movie 5 stars, you have to write a thesis on it.
Yeah.
And I think there's something in that style of movie. This is the sort of movie liked by people who get very, very defensive about liking intelligent movies. And that alone is another sort of string to its kind of obnoxious bow, really. I mean, obnoxious sounds very malicious, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. I liked it a lot more than the movie I'm about to name, but at its worst, it did give me Under the Silver Lake vibes, in that you think once COVID, you know, fades into the background and we're allowed to have parties again, if you go to a party with a load of film students, you will be pinned into a corner by the most boring guy just explaining all the metaphors of this.
Don't get me wrong, I think there's an amazing 90-minute movie in this.
Yeah,
you've got to chop an awful lot out of it.
Yeah, I find it sad because I haven't loved everything Kaufman did, but I've loved enough to make his movies an event for me. And certainly I don't think I've ever felt as let down by one as this.
Yeah. I mean, it seems to be a running theme with Netflix originals, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Where they give them carte blanche to do whatever they want, and this passion project, and the passion project is just...
I guess what we're saying...
Just sigh.
I guess what we're saying here is good luck, Guillermo del Toro. Sure, everything's going to go great.
Well, I think Roma, I didn't like it much, but I think that's probably one of the few exceptions.
Yeah, I've seen enough things like Roma or The Irishman or 13th where I've thought, you know what, a studio would have nixed that, and good for Netflix for showing it. But you're right,
Yeah.
when they sink, they sink.
And Okja as well had put on that list, but it's a
Yes,
very, very small list.
yeah. Although the thing is about Oksha is it's like only a hair weirder than some of the things Bong Joon-ho was doing for studios.
Yeah, that's true. He's got the right balance of weird, I think.
Yeah. So recommendations.
Oh, this is a tough one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Weirdly, I think the answer at the top end might have actually been a nice link. I think Donnie Darko might work well with this.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Because that too has a lot of philosophical theory in it, but it's wrapped around in a much more appealing and interesting movie, I feel,
Yeah.
which warrants and allows you to go back and maybe see something else or pick it apart or really dig deep into it. Because watchable movies are like that. You want to sort of investigate them. Whereas
Yeah.
this, it's a chore. And if you're having a chore, you want like carrot and stick.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I think Donnie
It
Darko
goes
would work.
back. It goes back to what I was saying last week, that when I first saw Mulholland Drive, I did not know what that was about, but every scene was a pleasure. So I just think there is a level of pleasure to Donnie Darko or Mulholland Drive that isn't there in like Jessie Buckley reading out the same poem for 5 solid minutes, shot through a car window.
Yeah. I mean, Locke worked well within a car, but
I
that
did keep thinking of Locke, yeah.
that was like very short. So it kind of
Yeah.
saving grace to that movie.
I was trying to think of something, because when I was trying to work out what the sod Kaufman is even doing here, I started to think of Douglas Hofstadter, the science writer, who's written, particularly in his book I Am a Strange Loop, about how much our understanding of the world is filtered through our personal memory and how that affects our perception. And I think there's an element of that in here. And I was trying to think of a movie that had got that across better. And I landed, and I didn't mean to land on this, but I landed on Kaufman's Old Mucker Spike Jonze with Her.
Aye, yeah. I really remember liking that film.
Yeah, I hadn't revisited it. I'm wondering if maybe I should now, because the thing that I took away from that was that Scarlett Johansson's character, Samantha, the AI, is literally programmed to become more like Theodore, the Joaquin Phoenix character, in the same way that machines do learn from people.
Yeah.
And for a while, Theodore finds that very appealing, that he has someone in his life who's very similar to him, and he likes that. And then suddenly she starts to become so much like him that actually it loses whatever individuality he previously felt for. And I think that's a much more elegant way of making the same point that also wraps it up in the basic plot structure of a love story, which makes the message more transmittable. It's that point about pleasure again. If you have something clever to say, find a simple genre to tell it in, I think.
When you were talking, you could also make a point. I can never remember the name of it, but it's the longest Don Hertzfeldt movie. Life is Beautiful, is it? Or am I mixing it up with something else?
Life is Beautiful is that Roberto Benigni thing.
I thought that was what I was mixing up
It's
with.
Such a Beautiful Day.
Yeah, I think that is that muses on the futility of life and getting older and getting more frail, but it does it in such a optimistic way. Life is hard, pains come, pains go, people die, but the sun will rise the next day and life is beautiful.
I hadn't thought of Hertzfeld, but you're right, that is a really good comparison point.
So I think watch I'm Thinking of Ending Things first, and then there's a pick-me-up.
Yes.
A bit of a weepy pick-me-up, at least. watch, watch that afterwards.
Oh, and listeners, don't forget to stay to the end credits of I'm Thinking of Ending Things, because there's a fantastic post-credits tag that is totally worth staying the whole thing for. I think Nick Fury turns up and recruits Jesse Plemons to the Avengers.
I'm Christopher Sabat, the voice of Roanoke Zorro, and you're listening to The Geek Show on thegeekshow.co.uk. What up?
So, if you're enjoying listening to the show and you want to help us keep rolling, as Limp Bizkit so regrettably said, there are several ways that you can help us out. Rob is not happy with my mention of Limp Bizkit, and I think I deserved that frown.
That was an inescapable song in my secondary school life.
Yes, yeah. Happy memories. But yeah, the easiest thing you can do is just share the podcast, tell your friends to have a listen. The slightly more advanced thing you can do is give us some money on Patreon at www.patreon.com/thegeekshow. We are planning several new projects and exclusives, which this will go towards funding. And the most advanced things for those who fancy themselves as men of or women of letters would be to write a review on your podcast provider of choice, because that really does help us with visibility. You can find us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram at TGS_The Geek Show.
Thanks for checking out one of the podcasts in our merry little family. We really do appreciate it. Podcasts aren't all we do. We also make strides into the world of video. If you like what you've heard and want more, then head on over to YouTube and search for The Geek Show.
Oh man, guys, have an awesome, fun late summer with our review of The Painted Bird over on thegeekshow.co.uk. We gave Mark Cunliffe the 2-hour, 40-minute Czech Holocaust film to review, and he had a blast.
Yeah, it's his entire year's fill of rape, murder, and rapey murder.
Don't forget the eye gouging. Plenty of eye gouging in it.
Yeah, for a movie where Udo Kier is not the worst or most dangerous thing in it, you're talking something real high-level perversion there.
Yes. But for now, it's time for our off-the-shelf section, and we have an off-the-cinema shelf one here. We haven't planned this very well, listeners. We've got two things that are out at cinemas, but one of them is old.
Well, earlier on, I mentioned there's directors who've had like one white-hot thing and then sort of went off the boil.
Yeah.
I was actually setting myself up there and I didn't realise it. Because Matthew Kasevich, I'd say that's a fair assessment of him. Because he arrived like a bat out of hell with Haine in 1995 and then sort of petered out.
Yeah. He did some lamentable Hollywood excursions. I think there was that one Babylon AD with Vin Diesel, which even he had acknowledged was bad.
Yes, but this one is 1995. It's around the time when there was lots of race riots and police riots in Paris, and we follow three people. Vince, played by a very young Vincent Cassel, which means, of course, he looks exactly the same as he does now. He doesn't age. He just doesn't age.
He doesn't. It's true.
Hubert, who ran a gym and he's very much into boxing, and Saeed. Now, I saw this years and years ago, around the time that I saw City of God.
Right.
So we're talking about, what, 2001? That's a decent old...
Something like that, yeah. Good comparison point.
But I totally forgot what the Haine was. Because what it is, it's basically 24 hours with three lads just wandering around the inner city Paris, this the hood, I guess you'd call it, if you're going to be in New York or Los Angeles. And what's happening with them in their lives, how it's a lot of poverty, the interactions that they have, the constant headbutting they have with the local police. And in the background, we're just coming off the back of something big happening, because Hubert's gym has been burnt down and there's a car in there. Nobody knows how they got the car in there, because it's bigger than the door.
Shades of Roma.
Yes, and there's one of the friends, Abdel, I think he's called, who's in hospital. Something happened to him. And Vincent Cassel says at the beginning that if he dies, I'm going to kill a policeman. And they've got hold of a gun somehow, a policeman's gun somehow. And it's, honestly, it falls out like a Linklater movie in that regard, where they're just sort of pottering around town. But the thing which I think doesn't get enough credit for this, for Haine. Haine gets talked about a lot as being sort of like a dangerous counter-culture sort of 90s movie. I could probably cite other examples, but again, 90s movies kind of very forgetful era for me. But what is overlooked is the character work.
Right, yeah.
As Vincent Cassel is introduced, he's talking to a mirror. He's reciting that speech, the famous speech from Taxi Driver. Are you talking to me? Because nobody else here, so you must be talking to me.
Yeah.
In Taxi Driver, Travis Bickle was using that because he was so starved of interaction that he was doing anything to get it, even if it was with himself. Here, he's using it as a means to sort of act tough, puff his chest out, act like a big man.
Yeah.
Hubert is kind of the moral epicenter of this. He becomes a really likeable and really down-to-earth guy. There's many times throughout where they walk past their sort of posters that says "The world is yours."
Yeah.
And it feels like that's sort of something that's working through him. So he wants to get out in the world. He wants to do something better. He wants to help people and improve the world. Saeed is just kind of the middle ground. He's trying to make the best out of what he has. He's not trying to burn the world down. He's not trying to escape. It's something else he's just trying to manage.
Yeah.
But just like little moments throughout, like take Vincent Cassel. He's like, acting incredibly aggressive, like so aggressive that you think he's going to end up murdering somebody and causing all sorts of stuff to kick down.
Yeah.
There's two scenes in particular which completely deconstruct him as a character. There's one where he happens upon some other people from that suburb that he lives, which is kind of plays out like in Shaun of the Dead, where the two groups sort of pass each other.
Oh, yeah.
Think, I wonder what version of the movie they had.
Yeah.
You know? And he goes off with that group and not being let into a club even, he ends up shooting someone dead. And the look on his face is rabbits in the headlights. He's really out of his depth. And there's a scene even later on where he actually holds a gun to Matthew Kasevich, who's doubling in for a Nazi skinhead. And he's threatened to pull the gun, and he can't. He almost throws up at the prospect of killing someone like that. And it's just much more than I remember it being. It's 24 hours in a very, very specific time. And three very, very specific people, but they're not like remarkable people in any way. These are just one of many. How I think the time that pops up every now and again kind of really brings that into focus. How, time continues to go on even if these people aren't here. Basically, these things will continue to happen. The constant time ticker on the screen shows that the world goes on even if they're not in it. Which makes it kind of a heartbreaking tale, really. And the way it ends as well, there's like I'm not going to say what happens, but there's a beautiful shot how it just doesn't show you what happens. It just sort of slowly pans into Saeed's face of utter shock. And I think that's an aspect of it which is also underrated, because you could sort of relate this to a lot of social realism, because it is in the technical sense, it's about social issues and it's realistic.
Yes.
Which, only if more social realism did that.
I like cheese. I like peas. I like cheesy peas.
There we go. But there's like lots of really neat shot choices throughout it, where the director's clearly expressing himself with the camera rather than just following people. There's funny moments as well. Like early on in the movie, Vin sees a cow for like literally no reason. So that's the cow from yesterday. There is no cow. What are you talking about, Vince? You're insane. And there's lots of like little moments like that where it's little gems of humour. There's little germs of philosophy. Like it opens with Hubert talking about a poem. It's something like a man jumps off the top of a building and he keeps on saying, "So far so good, so far so good, so far so good."
Mm-hmm.
And he's saying that's how life is on the street. So it's got lots going on there. It's one of these movies where it gets better the longer it goes on as well, because I'll be honest, I kind of hated it for the first half an hour because it's very focal on Vince, and Vince isn't a very easy character to hate.
Yeah.
But it's a very good performance. And it also sort of melds together realism and cinematic convention really well, where it feels like something where they just picked up a camera and went walking.
Yeah, which is, the gold standard for a movie like this, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's so interspliced. It is just they picked up a camera and went walking, but the characters that they've placed in it and the setups that they've put within that are all sort of very, very well put together.
Yeah.
And it holds up a lot better than I thought it did.
Good.
Which I was surprised, because I loved this movie when I was like, I'd say 18, which is about the right time to watch a movie like this.
But it still works.
Sort of like young angry movie. You watch it when you're young and angry. It's the perfect time for it. So when you're a bit older, you think, is it going to be like embarrassing thing that I liked when I was a kid? Because there's lots of things like that. You think you like a band, you go back to listen to that band, and you think, oh my god, teenage me was such an idiot.
Yes, I grew up during the Britpop years, so I have had that experience, yes.
But Haine's not one of them, and I'm happy about that. A lot better than I remember it being.
Superb. Well, speaking of coming of age, Hollywood cinema's most sustained coming of age metaphor, the X-Men franchise, comes to an end very soon with the New Mutants, the last film made by Fox before the Disney buyout. And we dispatched 4 panels, comic book experts Mick and Andrew, to review it. Well, I'm here with Andrew and Mick, who have been to the cinema to see The New Mutants, a film that has been delayed so long that its initial script was written on cuneiform tablets that were lost in the flood of Gilgamesh. But it's out now, and you finally managed to catch it.
Well, yes, us and about 36 other people worldwide. One of which was my son, who went to the same screening as me.
Yes, I think I was in a packed screening of 4 whole people to watch New Mutants.
Wow, that's twice as many as were in the cinema when me and my son went. We're surrounded by notices saying, please ensure that to maintain social distance you remain in your allocated seat. Why? There's no one here to infect.
Yes.
Yes, if anything, going to the cinema has been the most socially distanced I've ever been.
Yeah, and if anybody from View Cinema is listening in Basingstoke, we absolutely didn't feel the need to go around and lick every seat after we watched the film.
That's a suggestion that I didn't expect to be put in my mind. Now you've denied it, I'll assume you did it.
Or is that what I wanted you to think?
But no, I'm not getting bogged down in the weeds. The New Mutants, directed by Josh Boone, originally scheduled for release sometime around the Carboniferous period. What were our expectations going in?
Well, speaking personally, This was a Fox film based on the X-Men franchise, loosely. So my expectations were underneath the bottom of the barrel after it had had a good long scraping. That's where my expectations were.
Because the last time you two were on reviewing an X-Men film, it was Dark Phoenix. And that was great.
It was.
Yeah.
Oh, Dark Phoenix. Anyway,
Graham, my therapy sessions after seeing that have just finished.
Andrew, you were going to say?
Yeah, just that my expectation was, oh no, it's pissing it down. I guess we will just go see New Mutants after all.
So, high hopes indeed we had for this movie.
Yes. I have not seen this. I assume the plot is about some mutants who are new.
It's specifically one mutant is new.
Hang on, so it's the New Mutant.
Well,
it can't even get that right.
No, it's not so much that it's wrong. They're new mutants in that they're a different generation, but specifically, we follow the latest inhabitant of the institution that they are being, inverted commas, cared for in.
The newest mutant.
The newest mutant.
The littlest fawful.
Thought you hadn't seen it. Shall I do a synopsis, or would you like to do that, Andrew?
Yeah, I can kind of kick things off. So the important thing to remember about the New Mutants is that there's an old Native American proverb that within every person is two bears, and one of those bears thinks the New Mutants is, yeah, it's all right, whereas the other bear thinks, yeah, it's all right.
Which, that sounds like damnation.
It does.
But actually, within the context of the latter series of Fox-based Marvel movies, that's high praise indeed. I mean, I was going to go as far as to say it's not shit.
Indeed. I might even go as so far as to actually do a proper synopsis now.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
The film follows Danny Moonstar, who is played by Blue Hunt. She is the aforementioned newest mutant. She basically, her whole reservation is wiped out by what seems at the time to be a tornado. And Danny then wakes up in a mysterious institute run by one Dr. Cecilia Reyes, played by Alice Braga, who basically informs Danny that she is a mutant, like them X-Men, what you've seen on TV, and that she is now being, I believe the word she uses, sequestered in this institute for other new mutants so that they can learn how to use their powers effectively. And those include Rain Sinclair, played by Maisie Williams, who has the ability to turn into a big old good boy.
Really?
Yes, really.
Okay.
She turns into just a big pupper.
That's nice.
Sam Guthrie, who something equally pithy about being able to fly about like a cannonball.
Right.
And that is literally how they introduce him, pretty much.
Yeah. Ilyana Rasputin, who is played by Anya Taylor-Joy. Oh no, I've forgotten who played Cannonball. I think is it Charlie Houston?
Charlie Heaton.
Heaton, that's it. Anyway, Ilyana Rasputin. She can teleport through the extra-dimensional hell dimension known as Limbo and has a magic sword and a dragon puppet that sometimes isn't a dragon puppet. Don't worry about it.
It's cooler than it sounds, though.
Yes.
To be fair.
Roberto da Costa, played by, is it Henry Zaga?
Yeah.
Who has the ability of being rich.
Right. Well, that is a fairly well-established superpower, isn't it?
Yes.
It is. I mean, it works. It works for Bruce Wayne. It works for Tony Stark. It's
yeah.
Also, sometimes he's just too gosh dang hot. And
Again, a popular superpower for X-Men.
indeed. So,
Indeed.
yeah, all the kids are in the Institute trying to learn how to better control their abilities. However, and hold on to your hats, the spooky rundown mental asylum that they've been locked into might not be as benevolent as it seems.
Yes, okay. Just give me a second to pick myself up from the floor.
So yeah, the group of teens who are originally kind of slightly at odds with each other have to learn how to work together so that they can kind of escape and also maybe fight a big bear.
Right. Sorry, Big Bear?
Yes.
Yeah,
That
you did pick up on that bit at the beginning about inside every human there's two bears.
right. I didn't expect it to come back so literally.
But
Oh,
you've met us. You've met us, right?
Yes,
yes.
Right.
fair enough.
Also, if there's one thing New Mutants is not, it is subtle about any of its themes.
Yeah, and also, we're from 4-panel. We don't do subtlety and subtext. We're not eclectica. You'll never find a metaphor in our reviews.
Yeah. Again, to quote the Bard, I've known writers who use subtext and they're all cowards.
So, okay, that's certainly a plot. What are the cast like? Because there's some interesting names in there, right?
I mean, I'll be honest. They're okay. They're good.
Yeah.
Yeah, they deliver lines and stuff in a sort of animated and emotive way that, say, Sophie Turner didn't manage.
Yes.
Yeah, certainly underlining that point, I would say Maisie Williams probably my favourite in this film.
Yeah,
Maisie Williams is very rad. I think she is absolutely sterling in The Fallen. I like her a lot.
yeah, yeah. She's probably the standout performer.
Yeah. She also manages to have the right accent for most of the film.
The difficulty with this is its strength is what the previous series of X-Men related films would have seen as a weakness, is that these are not X-Men that people have heard of outside of sort of die-hard comic book fans.
Yeah.
You know, even if you're not a huge comic book fan, you've seen pictures of Wolverine sort of leaping off the page in bookshops and newsagents and stuff.
Yeah.
Less so with these characters, and I think that is its big strength, because it's not bogged down in a load of mutant lore. There's little fan pleasing allusions to Professor X and other sort of established bits, but they're not massive sort of coat hangers that the plot drops off of. They're just references in the way that references should be, not in a way that makes you think I've missed a huge bit of plot there because I haven't spent the last 30 years reading the entire backstory of the X-Men.
Yes.
So for me, that was a big strength. I think it's it's unfortunate for the New Mutants that the level of delay that it underwent meant that it came out in the middle of a pandemic.
Right.
Oh, we don't want it to lose box office if it goes up against Dark Phoenix or Deadpool 2. Oh shit.
I mean, we have joked about how this and Terry Gilliam's Don Quixote being completed were probably seals of the apocalypse being broken.
Well, I mean, you know, I went into the cinema, and even at the point where the BBFC screen came up, I was still thinking we could get an announcement here saying today's screening of New Mutants has unfortunately been delayed until December 2021.
Yeah, and I think that's contributed to kind of why I maybe didn't like New Mutants as much as I kind of hoped I would. Is that just it has built up this kind of mythology of being constantly delayed, and it's one of those films that we may never see the light of day, and then it has finally come out. And to be honest with you, I'd have been perfectly happy to just watch this on Disney Plus like a couple of years ago.
That is very odd, isn't it? Because they are currently following an interesting strategy of taking Mulan, their hotly anticipated $200 million blockbuster, and releasing it. Now, let me see if I've got this straight. Releasing it so that you can pay to see it, but only if you have a subscription to the streaming site where it will be available at no extra charge in 3 months anyway.
Yes.
I mean, it seems like a great plan that couldn't go wrong, but I do find it slightly strange that they've treated their big investment that way and not, say, this.
Well, I believe they're actually talking about cutting short New Mutants' run in cinemas, then Mulan-ing it.
I mean, out of all the ironic fates, it finally gets released just so they can take it out of cinemas.
But I mean, bearing in mind that only 1 in 3 seats in any cinema showing it can actually have a person in.
Yeah.
It's managed to recoup nearly a quarter of its budget already. It's clearly got an audience. And do you know what I think this is going to end up being? I think that of what we would term the Fox Marvel universe,
Yeah.
I've got a feeling this is going to be that universe's With Nail and I. It's going to be instantly forgotten on its initial release, and then in 30 years' time they'll have separate conventions just for this movie.
That seems like a bold prediction.
I think it'll make its money back, but it'll be in the after sales and the residuals. It won't be. I don't think it'll be quite to the level of With Nail and I, but I think it will become something of a cult classic.
Because during the film's production and then its endless post-production, there were quite a lot of claims made about the tone of the film. That it was going to be more of a teen movie, that, oh no, wait, it's going to be more of a horror movie, that, oh no, wait, it's going to be a teen movie again. So I assume it does at least feel appreciably different from a standard X-Men film.
Yeah, it's not brash and colourful. It's dark, it's gloomy. It's not a teen movie. It's not a horror movie. It's a teen horror movie.
Which is something that hasn't been so big since like the 90s days of Scream and The Faculty and such like.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it does feel a lot like those kind of almost a 90s throwback movie, I think.
Yeah. But I mean, it's one of those films where I went to the cinema to see it because, one, the pandemic meant it's been like 6 months since I've been to the cinema. and the other thing is that I thought, I've got to give it a chance. We've talked about it on Eclectica and 4Panel, and it's been the butt of jokes, but we've kind of got to give it a chance.
Yeah.
People have still gone out and spent time and money making this thing.
Yeah.
And it's definitely one that's firmly in that category of, oh, come on, it's a comic book movie, just sit back, relax and enjoy it. Just go along for the ride. And if you do that, and you don't expect MCU levels of glitz and gloss,
Yeah.
you're alright. It's cool. It works. It's got a few niggles. There are a few bits I didn't like. But it's been a fortnight now since I saw it, and I can't remember what the niggles were.
Yeah, I do have kind of an armour-piercing question counterpoint to that, though, Mick.
Yeah.
What was your favourite part of the New Mutants movie? Because do you know what mine was? It was like the monsters that had the kind of smiley face, I guess.
I can tell you what my favourite bits were. It was the bits where Ilyana Rasputin kicked in her power, because suddenly your eyes seared with bursts of colour, and it really popped out for me. I really enjoyed those bits, and I was thinking, I want to see more of this character. Please complete the New Mutants trilogy. Oh wait.
Yeah, I just felt like I needed a little bit more of those bits. Like you saw kind of like a flash of, there's sort of a portal with a bit of like a weird red dimension in it and some very quick sword cuts, and I would have liked more of a prolonged sequence where you actually got to see more of what she was doing.
And I think, to be fair, apart from Maisie Williams and Blue Hunt's characters, there isn't much in the way of development for the others. I mean, as I say, Ilyana's probably got the coolest power in terms of on-screen presence as a power, especially, with the Dragon Companion. I mean,
who wouldn't want a Dragon Companion?
Exactly. Just ask Amelia Clark.
Yes.
But the thing with it is, this is where it feels like the first film of a trilogy. And I suspect that if we'd spent more of the plot exploring everybody's powers, it would have been less of a film.
Yeah.
And it'd have been more like those expositional bits on the Old Guard.
Oh boy, yeah.
Whereas, if you think about it as like the seeds of a new trilogy, which is what was the original intention, what you've actually got is those little bits of going, oh, I'm going to have to watch the second film to learn more about that.
Yes.
Yeah. And find out more of Ilyana's exciting character arc of learning to not quite be so racist anymore.
That's not a bad lesson.
Yeah. These are good character arcs.
Is this based on the Flight of the Conchords song "I'll Be the Racist Dragon"?
That was exactly what I was pulling from. Thank you, Graham.
Oh, right. So I needed to have watched some Flight of the Conchords to get that reference.
It's fine, it's less obscure than we normally have on this show. I have the film's Wikipedia page open here, which contains the remarkable sentence, critics called the film middling, so-so, and perfectly fine.
Which is far greater praise than Dark Phoenix got.
Yes, fair enough.
Or indeed the last 72 entries in the X-Men franchise. And this is why I know this is a better film than most of the X-Men franchise, because it doesn't fall into that problem I've got where I watch an X-Men film and then don't remember it.
Yeah.
Which is supposed to only happen with Men in Black films.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, to be fair to New Mutants compared to Dark Phoenix, at no point in New Mutants did I feel like, if not for the fact that I was obligated to watch this for a podcast, I would stand up and leave the cinema now. So it's got that.
And the other advantage it's got over Dark Phoenix is that none of the cast appeared to be posing a fire hazard. Just by being on the set.
Yes, you can sort of trace a downward chart for the cast members who came on board with First Class, can't you, of how interested they are in this movie.
Yeah. Just
sinking and sinking all the time.
And then what they've managed to do is develop that into some kind of virus that they even managed to infect Jessica Chastain with, as she does her guest stint in the franchise.
God, those late X-Men films wasted some actors playing villains, didn't
they?
Chastain, Oscar Isaac, Peter Dinklage, bloody hell.
I know.
Oh my god, I forgot Peter Dinklage was in an X-Men film.
Yeah.
Thank God it's all over now.
Yes, the IP has reverted to Marvel, and we can look forward to this in Phase 94.
Yes. Which, due to the pandemic, starts sometime in the 37th century.
Life's rubbish, isn't it? So, out at the cinemas today, in fact, we've got a film that we are hoping to cover in coming weeks, probably not next week, but soon. It's Bill and Ted Face the Music.
Yeah, I saw the trailer of this before Tenet, and not bad, actually.
Yeah, I mean, Bill and Ted is, again, one of those things where you think, is this really going to hold up today? But maybe the world always needs some good-natured dumbass energy.
Well, I'll be honest, Keanu Reeves looks weird shaven.
Yes. It's weird that, isn't it? You look at him normally and you think this guy doesn't age, but then you put him in Ted Logan's costume and you think, this guy has actually aged.
And Samara Weaving's in it as well, and she's just brilliant.
Samara Weaving, who I agree is brilliant, and Kristen Schaal is in this movie.
Somebody listened to my question of the week answer a few weeks ago.
Exactly!
She needs to be in more... If you never saw the episode, she needs to be in more movies, was the gist.
Totally. Yeah. So that's out, and it faces stiff competition for what is this year's biggest box office hit, largely because it was made in one of the few countries which has been able to successfully reopen cinemas. It's Guan Hu's Chinese war movie, The 800.
Chinese war movies is very, very full on.
Showing on 25 screens here, so possibly not going to repeat its global success, I would say, but I'm sure plenty of people see it anyway.
Maybe on VOD somewhere.
Yes, yeah. Speaking of which, we do have an interesting VOD release for Friday. We have Barking Dogs Never Bite, the first film by Bong Joon-ho.
That's a odd film, that.
I've never seen that one. That's the only one of his I haven't seen yet.
It's kind of very dark humour, and it's a lot of, unrelated sketches. With next to no connective tissue, besides the fact that it's got some dogs in it.
That is sort of interesting, because one of Bong Joon-ho's strongest suits is that his plotting is immaculate. So I'll be interested to see how he does without that.
It's a completionist thing, but I'm happy I've seen it.
Yeah.
And hopefully that's a pathway to releasing the other films of his on the Com Video again.
Yeah. Some of them need a bit more attention.
Indeed.
We've got a film that was released on VOD during the lockdown age and is now receiving an independent cinema release. White Riot, Rebecca Shah's documentary about the British Rock Against Racism movement, which I've heard very good things about from friends.
Interesting. Could be good, that.
And we've got a British film that, again, was lined up to have a cinema release before the pandemic, and I got the sense that this was a thing where people were already thinking this might cross over. So I think now it's probably got a better chance, because Tenet's the only big film that's going to be coming out for quite a while, and Bill and Ted. But this is Rock's, Sarah Gavron's coming-of-age movie with a cast of total newcomers.
Who will inevitably do very, very well and end up in an American movie in about a week.
Yes, yeah. Look forward to all of these kids being like the baddies henchmen in a Marvel movie fairly soon.
We can't keep all of them, can we? We really can't.
You just can't, no.
Very frustrating, that I feel.
Yeah, no, I agree. But next week we are doing the latest in our Director's Lottery series, which came out last time with John Ford. We said at the time that we sometimes are guilty of doing too many little noodly oddities in directors' CVs, when we do Director's Lottery, and we should do one of the big ones, and we've kept to that promise. We are doing Stagecoach next week.
So look forward to that.
Yes. But until next week with Stagecoach, that's been your lot from Cinema Eclectica. I've been Graham.
And I've been Rob.
See you next week.
I'm Christopher Sabat, the voice of Roanoke Zorro, and you're listening to The Geek Show on thegeekshow.co.uk.